Hey, look, if there's one thing you've heard me say in this show week after week, it's how valuable my improv training has been for my voiceover career. And I don't think there's any place better in town than the Second City Hollywood Training Center. And not only do I teach there, but the tremendous staff of Second City alumni and teachers bring to life a fantastic curriculum of rock-solid improv training for every level of student. That's from folks who are just looking to get a little bit of basic improv training to make their auditions and their film and TV work come to life, to folks who are hungry for the entire Second City show crafting process. You can get it all. We've even got specialty workshops on acting, writing, a directing program. I teach an intro to voiceover class that I think's the best deal in VO training in town. And exclusively for listeners of this podcast, you can get 15% off your first session of improvisation by entering the code all over when you sign up online. So come and learn from the best at Second City Hollywood and discover how improv can ignite your performance career as well. Either call us at 323-464-8542 or go to www.secondcity.com and click the Hollywood Training Center link to take your life to the next stage. Next stage. See, they get the pun? All right. Let's start the show. Yeah. I paid 99 cents for it.
That's lovely.
What's up? Welcome to another episode of All Over Voiceover with Kip VH. I'm your host, Kip Vandenheuvel. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in once again. And with me in studio, this is it's a cool moment for me to have my guest in, just because I've known you probably longer than most actors, certainly actors in this city. Marc Evan Jackson is in the house.
Hello.
We went to Calvin College together.
That's true.
30 years? Not 30 years ago. No, 30 years
Nearly,
ago.
yeah.
Nearly, yeah.
I think I probably met you in 1988. Yeah.
Man.
Kind of crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
But how did you find yourself going there, of all places? I know you're from New York.
I'm from Buffalo, New York, yeah. I grew up in a religious household in a Christian family, and Calvin College is a Christian school, but I had gone to very good public schools growing up, and at the time, my life is different than it is now, and I really wanted to get a more academic take on religion and theology.
Huh.
You know, I'd done Sunday school and youth group and Bible studies and all that stuff growing up. And I thought, college was, first of all, a very scary prospect, and I wasn't headed in any particular direction. I remain that today. But yeah, so I checked out all these schools. My parents were very cool and drove me to Gordon Barrington outside of Boston, Houghton College in the southern tier of New York State, Geneva, which is outside of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go to Wheaton because I had friends that from home that were going there.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go there. And all those schools were pledge schools that said you had to sign a pledge saying you wouldn't drink, dance, or smoke while you were enrolled at those schools. Which
the Christian College Coalition has their NDA, basically.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
And it seemed really punitive and mean-spirited. And, with the exception of dancing, I guess I smoked a pipe in high school, but with the exception of dancing, like I wasn't a drinker or anything, but it just seemed like, well, hang on, I think college is when you're supposed to try that stuff. So it just seemed like a technicality to kick people out on, kind of thing. Yeah. And so the last of the schools that I visited was Calvin, and across when we got to Fridays at Calvin, which is their tour thing, in butcher paper across the front of Bolt Heinz Timmer, one of the dorms, it said all campus dance tonight. And I was like, hang on. This seems a little different. Yeah. So Calvin, which is I think my worldview has changed drastically since my time there. But Calvin, ironically, is associated with a fairly conservative denomination. Yeah. But given its size, it's a little bit larger. I think it's 4,500 students or somewhere in that neighborhood.
That sounds right.
It's a fairly liberal college.
It truly is.
Compared to some of the others that I looked at. And it's a place where I got a great education despite my efforts. I think I disagree with them on a lot of issues, spiritual and political these days. But it was a place that framed the way that I think. I mean, they taught me to be skeptical and allowed me to do so. I had some wonderful, wonderful instructors there.
I feel the same way. I feel like that place really it was preordained that I was going to go because I was Dutch and from Grand Rapids, and it was the school.
Yeah.
And everybody in my family who went to college went there.
Yeah.
What was interesting to me is my mom was an art major, and she was very much like, trust the arts at Calvin.
Yeah. Trust
them. And I was like, well, I didn't have a choice, but kind of I said, okay. And I'm really grateful for that time and those people and
yeah, for sure.
And all those things. Especially, I think, like there was the academic side, but then outside of that, the perimeter of that, the improv stuff, which I mean, for both of us was a massive impact. Yeah, I mean, did you do? Were you doing improv on campus? So you started doing after, right, with River City?
Long after, yeah. I was part of the Calvin Theater Club,
Thespians,
for about 5 minutes my freshman year. They wanted me to come paint the set for Caucasian Chalk Circle, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And also it was a time like it was a little bit of a turnoff, and I'm sure you know these people. I think you were far more involved than I was.
Yeah.
But there were some stars there, and it seemed like a lot of people wearing black turtlenecks and dark lipstick, smoking thin cigarettes, and just shy of berets, and it was like, I don't like these people at all. I had done a play or two in high school kind of thing and, grew up doing a ton of music. And so I was part of something in the Calvin College catalog used to say like the Calvin Theater is something, a club, not a class, not a club, or a club, not a class. It was something framed that way.
Okay.
Anyway, it was a couple years after I graduated that friends of ours who were starting River City Improv initially asked my former roommate, Conrad Bacher, to come play the piano for them.
Okay.
And he was like, I don't want to do this. You go do it. And I showed up at the first rehearsal and was wowed. Like I saw what they were doing and I, was like, oh, we have to find somebody else to come play the piano because I want to do what you guys are doing for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like it was a true aha moment. And that led to me being on stage with River City Improv for several years. And then my job in Grand Rapids, I'd done several things, but I was working for the National Public Radio affiliates at WGVU, and the Second City Touring Company from Detroit came through town, and I befriended their producer, George Bernius, and said, hey, man, if you ever hold auditions, let me know. And a few months later, they did, and that's how I became... I made the mistake, arguably, of putting all my music on my resume, so they hired me sight unheard to come play the piano for the touring company, which I did for a few months, and then soon was the main stage musical director in Detroit, and then on stage. But yeah, I mean, improvisation is the key to everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
We're going back real quick.
Please.
Was when you were was that your first time on radio when you were at NPR there? How did you find yourself doing that, getting into that world?
I think like a lot of things in life, completely accidentally. So I grew up listening to NPR in Buffalo. I grew up listening to WNED and I think the station out of the University of Buffalo, and knew it. I mean, it was my afternoon spent with my mother in the car coming to and from piano lessons and French horn lessons and percussion lessons, and so all things considered was a really seminal part of my upbringing. And so I happened to be living on, do you remember the liquor store Smitty's in Easttown?
Very well,
Yeah.
Yes.
I was living down the block from that with a couple of roommates, a couple of guys, Colin Yeager and Jonathan Van Antwerpen. And living next door to us was Scott Vanderwerf. And I was like, sweet, Scott Vanderwerf, are you a jazz DJ on WGVU? And he's like, yeah, man. And I said, I love public radio. So they were at the time a jazz and news station, and he was like, "You should come work there." And Grand Rapids was a town, and I think it likely still is, where, it's a really great proving ground because it's not saturated. So if you like River City Improv was like, we're going to start an improv company, and they just did. Yeah. And they're still going. You know, like it's a great place. It's sort of fruitful soil to try something. So I, went and applied, and they for I think a job that didn't exist, and they were like, well, you could be on the radio from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Saturdays. And it was recording bulk feeds off the satellites, and it was doing time and temperature, basically. It was legal IDs. It was saying, you're tuned to 1480 AM and 88.5 FM, WGVU. The time is 10 o'clock, and it was just that stuff. So it started with that, and then that turned into that, plus Sundays, 6 a.m. to noon. So I was working 7 days a week. And then they fired, or I think the producer for the 5 day a week, Monday through Friday, the Bill Freeman show. Do you remember Bill Freeman?
Yeah.
He's out here now.
What?
He's a pastor.
No kidding.
In I'll think of it, somewhere out here in California. His producer went to go work for WZZM Channel 13, and I became the producer of the Monday through Friday 9 to noon call-in talk show with Bill Freeman, and screening calls, booking guests, all that jazz.
Yeah.
And then, as happens in radio, they fired him on a Friday, and we're like, I think, our news director subbed for a few weeks, but then they were like, you're the host of the morning show. It was, and I was dumber then than I am now. And it was like, I was talking to, the governor and senators and, school board people. Like, I can't imagine looking back at those air checks. Like, it has to be, like, I was so afraid to offend and knew nothing. I don't know much now. And to think back on those days, and the interviews must have been super cushy and soft and know nothing. But I mean, I was thrown into it.
Yeah.
And then you begin to find your voice, I guess.
What a kick in the head. That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, completely accidental.
How did that did you do this work when you got to Detroit as well? Once you got started with Second City, I know Second City is kind of all-encompassing.
It's a black hole, yeah.
Yeah, you just immerse yourself completely in process and all that other stuff. But you guys did some outside stuff as well, yeah?
A little bit. I mean, we would do things with the Second City. So very early on in my time there, our producer, Rico Bruce Wade, got a relationship with Channel 7, and we were kind of doing sketchy bumpers for a Saturday night movie night on Channel 7. And that was our SNL. Like, that was a place, it was a really good skill set. And I honestly think it's why a lot of us are working today, because we were in the process at the time, too. We were writing our next stage show for the main stage company and doing this thing. So
all of that during process.
Mm-hmm. So we were writing all the time.
Man.
And we were mining gold out of the smallest nugget of a kernel of an idea, just trying to go, okay, we need content for Saturday for, I think it was called, Cinema 7 with the Second City or something along those lines.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the, Svengoolie, like it was, the bumpers. It was like dinner and a movie kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was sketch, and it was Keegan-Michael Key and Larry Joe Campbell and Mary Jane Porres and Catherine Chittick and Mark Warzeka and Antoine McKay. Like we were all, Margaret Exner, Edward Towski, like we were all in it just running. And it was a great training ground for creativity, because it was just like, go, do something, grab a wig, here's a bit.
It's going to be on TV, whatever, get
Saturday.
it done.
Yeah.
Get it done.
So yeah, we were in the process with all that. But in terms of like, VO and on-camera commercial stuff, very little. There was Second City was, first of all, very reticent to let you go do something rather than be in rehearsal.
Yes.
They made you feel it. You felt bad about yourself. But I can remember doing a handful of things. Greg Trescoma and I had a campaign for like NASCAR or something.
Oh, wow.
Running for a little while on camera. And then I can remember doing a handful of voiceover auditions in Detroit, but it was a different time. It was before the internet, so it's not like we were recording. I can remember I bought my first laptop when I lived in Detroit. I bought it from Joe Jane's.
Did you really buy Joe Jane's laptop?
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious.
Yep.
It was an interesting time to be coming up because I was at that exact same time starting to penetrate in that market as well. In terms of you have one agent who handles two agents because no one was exclusive there.
No one. I don't think they still are.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think the market's too small there, and it's like, oh, this copy came to one or it goes to one or the other. I think
they're almost more like casting directors than talent agents, right?
That's
how
absolutely
it feels.
right.
Yeah,
that's absolutely right. It feels way more consistent with that sort of model.
Right.
That it's like we have the work, come and check it out.
Right.
And the booth is the same room that you record your on camera stuff in. It's just the space that you have.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a union town, and it was one of the cool things about that market of making that transition from being a non-union guy trying to figure stuff out to quickly becoming a union person if you want to work in that town, and then learning the ropes of all that.
I got Taft-Hartley there. I was not there long enough. I got, must join or whatever when I first arrived here.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. I was from something I can't remember. It's either Marathon Gas or some car commercial. It was a J. Walter Thompson thing in Detroit that I was like Taft-Hartley for. So when I arrived here and booked my first guest spot on a television show, I had to join the union then. So I joined out here.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you come? What was your trajectory from Detroit? Because you came straight to L.A. from Detroit. Yeah?
I did, which wasn't really my choice. I really was thinking. I was really thinking Chicago was going to be the next step for me to go to the second city there, and maybe be on the ETC or with hope the main stage at some point.
Yeah. And
I reached out and was in no uncertain terms told, we don't need any more smart white guys in Chicago. And I was like, okay. And I asked about LA and was told, like, we don't know anything about LA, which remains true to this day.
That's true.
So I was like, I briefly entertained New York. I didn't really know anybody there. And just even from thousands of miles away could guess that Los Angeles is a far more hospitable place to be an out-of-work actor than New York City.
Yeah.
Just seasonally and expense and all that stuff.
Right.
So I and also my friends Eric Black and Larry Joe Campbell had come out here. Catherine and David Chittick were out here. So I knew that like at least I'd have a couch to crash on the first few nights while I found my bearings kind of thing. So yeah, I put all my stuff in a truck and headed west.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That whole, there's something that just still, even reflecting on it, even after being out here for a little while, is so daunting and like exciting and terrifying and everything that's involved with making a cross-country move. And it's interesting to me, your process of going to Calvin has a similar texture to it. You didn't necessarily know anybody. You were kind of leaping into it and seeing, let's see what this is like, yeah?
Yeah, but I mean, I think all of life felt that way at the time. Like I probably am one of those people that, given different circumstances, wasn't meant for a 4-year school. I left when I went to Calvin, I was 17 years old. Like I think I had maybe just turned 18 in August. I didn't know what I wanted to study. It was a tremendous expense and risk to, put me in that. Like I was not a good student. I'm still not. That's not really how I learn. Like I'm a kind of experiential learner. My wife is a person that if you sent her into a room with a stack of books, she'd come out with a PhD. I would build a fort from the books. Like I'm just not that person. They would not get read. So yeah, I think that, Calvin felt there's actually a photograph of me sitting on the lawn between like Rooks Van Dellen and Beats Veenstra, or one of those dorms, like the moment before my parents are going to get back in the car and drive away. Like they had taken me to school and they're about to go, and you can see the sum total of fear of the cosmos in my eyes. Like it's daunting. But yeah, I coming out here seems really recent. And also seems like I've been here 40 years. Like things are starting to move in my career, which is really nice. Yeah. I've also been here 16 years. So,
man,
yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts.
how long did it take you to kind of really feel like that you had, that transition of getting into a town and then being like, I'm here now. This is now my home. And
Right.
there's the declaration of that and saying, I am now a this
Sure.
versus feeling it.
It took a very long time for me, and I think that that's probably natural. But I think I probably lean towards feeling like an outsider, and maybe that's universal too. I don't know, but I can remember being here initially and thinking like, I'm gonna get arrested. Like the cops are gonna pull up on me and go like, what are you doing here? And be like, because I was broke and my car died the day before I was gonna drag it out here.
Oh man!
Behind a budget rent a truck, like it committed suicide. Like it was not gonna come. So I was like without transportation and absolutely destitute, and I just thought they're gonna roll up on me and be like, justify your existence, and I'd be like, you're right, I should be. Send me back home. I'm gonna go wait tables at Union Street.
I feel that same way,
Yeah.
and for the longest, I felt that way in Chicago too. But more so here because it had occupied such a space of importance throughout my life.
Oh, yeah.
I need to, and then to start getting little ice picks into it and being like, no, I've got friends and work.
Yeah. Places I like to go, restaurants I've eaten at before. That Los Angeles is such a spread out town that it was a little bit of a culture shock. I mean, it's a far more expensive town, but also in Detroit, like most of us would finish every night in the same pub. Like we'd see your friends almost every day, and you'd stop for a nightcap or whatever, and you'd see almost everyone you knew, most nights a week. That's not the case here. Like I have friends, lots of friends in this town, and I did right away. But like Keegan lived 45 minutes east, Larry lived 45 minutes south. Like you're not going to bump into them. Like you got to plan. And much like my book for it, I am not a planner. Yeah, it's a culture shock a little bit. But it's I think it's valuable to realize that everybody has those feelings. Everybody has the feeling of like, I don't belong. Is this ever going to work? Questioning whether you should go home and do something else. Like it's a tough journey. For people starting out in it, like I've definitely gleaned some lessons throughout the years, but as they tell you early on, like if you can fathom yourself doing anything else, go do that.
Consider it seriously.
Yeah, consider that pretty seriously because it is daily rejection, and there are ways to frame that don't seem so soul crushing, but it's like you are not going to get that job that you're auditioning for today, like, and you better not need it. You better not need that job. Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of ours yesterday when we were sitting over at 200 South.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm paying bills right now, sitting outside this callback audition. And it's changing the way I feel about what I'm about to go do because I'm paying these bills and I'm letting money go out. And now it makes me need what I'm about to do even more.
That's a mistake.
And I don't want that energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is. It's that part of it is something that I never felt prepared for about this work. Everything is about from you've already booked the job, you're there day one, table read with people, versus how do I prepare and hunt and get this work? And if I was crafting some sort of preparation for this kind of thing, it would really focus way more on that than on the nuts and bolts work of it.
Oh, I think relationships are huge. That's one thing. Specifically about voiceover that and I don't know, you've likely discussed this on this show and probably have strong feelings about it, but I have a lot of, I'll like meet younger people in the business and they're like, oh, you go into your agency? And I was like, yeah, as often as I can. And they're like, oh, I can do it from home. I was like, well, anybody can do it from home. It's super good to go and remind them that you're, available and funny and nice, and that if they book you on something, you're going to show up. And just top of mind awareness, out of sight, pardon me, out of sight, out of mind, and they're going to forget that you exist. And rather than just be some voice on an MP3, go and have them go, oh, you know who's great for this KIF? Like because those jobs come in where they're like, we need this in an hour. We're going to send it to 4 people.
Right.
Make sure you're one of those 4 people. And a lot of that's about relationships. Los Angeles is a very small town. Hollywood is a very small town. And everything, you have to be great at it. So you better be great at voiceover. And if you're not great, you better be taking classes and doing workshops and improv classes for sure. No matter if you're on camera or voiceover, everyone on the planet should take an improv class, but especially actors. And it's not even to become funny or to become quick or whatever. It just opens up and, it opens up your mind to what happened just before these words on the script happened, and it shows you infinite ways into it, from slapstick to dirge, and you can go, Michael Gelman, one of our directors back at Second City, said to our cast once, Second City done well, going through an improv process, going through a learning thing, you'll never again go into an audition going, what are you guys looking for? You'll go in going like, I have 2 ways that only I can do that you've not seen before, that I can make this hilarious or meaningful or sad or whatever. Yeah. You're going to see a lot of options. And I just see a lot of actors going into auditions going yes, memorized it. It's like, well, hey man, that's not even half of it. Being off book is not the goal. Being that guy, being that character is what you're trying to do. Right. So yeah, I see a lot of actors, not going in and pressing the flesh. And as I said, things in my life are going in a good direction right now. It's a lot about relationships, and it's a lot about sales. It's about staying in front of people and being meaningful, being earnest and genuine with people. It's about, I did it, and I see a lot of people do it, where you're in a waiting room, you're going like, I'm wrong for this. I'm too old for this, or I'm too young for this role. Like, you're surrounded by, I'm 46 there, you're surrounded by 25-year-olds. Yeah. And you can go, what am I doing here? I drove across town for this. And you go, I guarantee, the way to approach it is to say, I guarantee they're going to remember me. Because first of all, I'm going to do this, I'm going to deliver this copy the way only I can. But also I'm going to stick out for sure. And you're not auditioning for that role. You're auditioning for 2 years from now. Yes. When they go, who is that guy that was 20 years older than everybody else in here, but was hilarious? Let's bring that guy back. Yes. And those seeds that you plant germinate, and you're going to have to keep yourself alive for those 2 years, but those things work. That's right. And good casting people in LA, and there are a lot of them, are superheroes, because I've not seen, when I first got to town, I went to producers twice for the same. Drew Carey was producing a live improvised sitcom involving somebody from the Eagles.
Thank God You're Here. Isn't that it?
I think it was before that. Oh. Thank God You're Here came later. That was kind of almost like a game show of improv. But this was like a narrative half hour of one of the dudes from the Eagles had a dude, his roadie Mooch lived in his pool house, and then he had a smarmy manager. And I read for Mooch, and then I read for the manager. And it was Sheila Guthrie and Susan Goddard Smythe. And I did that, and I was like, oh, Hollywood is easy. I went straight to producers. I was meeting with Sam Simon and Dan Patterson, and I was like, oh, this is going to go great. I should probably look at some cars. And then, I didn't book that, which is not a mystery. And then years went by, and I didn't see those 2 casting directors. And I read for something, honestly, maybe 5 years later. And Susan Goddard Smythe was like, I know you. And I was like, well, it's unlikely. She's like, did you read for Mooch and the manager? I was like, what are you talking about? Their brains are encyclopedias for actors, and they remember stuff. Yeah. And so it's, your job is to be cool and to own the material and to go do something, to take notes and not be precious about it. If they go, that was great, please, here's some terrible direction. Your job is to kind of take that terrible direction or not, or do what you believe in and send that message. But you are not auditioning for the role that you're auditioning for that day. You're auditioning for your career in Hollywood, and you've got to be cool, and you've got to not need it. And it's a tough thing because, a lot of people that move out here do so at great expense and are doing, they might have been a big deal back home. So it's emotionally difficult because, even if you leave the Second City main stage, I've seen people come off the Second City main stage in Chicago and Toronto and come to LA and be like, hey, hang on a second. These people don't have any idea who I am. It's like, that's right.
Yep, that's right. I remember you saying that to me before coming out here. Like one of the first things that you learned was like, just because it says Second City on your resume, that's enough. Don't worry about which stage or where.
Right.
Because it does not matter. Here, it's like that's just another credit on your resume. Who are you? And it's such a democratic town in that way that there's. When you're in a smaller market and there's the celebrities you're going up against, I'm not competing. I want to come and compete. If I'm going to lose a job, I want to lose to not a local celebrity.
Right.
I want to lose to Matt Damon.
Yeah.
That's okay by me because you know what I mean?
For sure.
And the point that you just made about the casting directors too, I think is really, really important. And it was something I learned quickly here was I had to redefine my notion of success. I'm not successful because I booked X and so.
Right.
I'm successful because I got in that room.
Oh yeah.
And made them laugh and smile and go, that was great, thanks.
Yeah.
And while it might seem like 2-3 years before I see them again, their mentality is like it's only been 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
You walk into a room after not seeing a casting director for a really long time and they're like, oh yeah, good to see you again. And you're like, you remember.
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I think that, to be human with those people, like you realize now, being here so long, some of these people are friends of mine. And you realize like, wait a second, they were rooting for me the entire time. And they're rooting for all actors. Like they want you to succeed. They want to be blown away. They want to have difficult decisions. I think too often, early on, I can remember doing it myself where you're like, why does this feel like a trip to the principal's office to go into this room? Like, it shouldn't be that. This isn't a test of whether you've memorized it. You need to be so cold on the material that you can do it, blindfolded. You could patter through it at speed if you needed to. And for me, you need to be so, like this is on-camera stuff generally. Obviously, with VO, you've got the copy in front of you generally, but you should be familiar with it and be able to do the same. But you should be able to know it so well that you can go in and comment on something in the room. Like it shouldn't be so precarious a memorization or what have you that you're like, any questions? Like, let's just do it before I lose it. It can't be that kind of relationship. You have to be able to go in and go like, this is a beautiful plant. What is this?
Yeah.
Or notice something in the room or mention the weather or anything. Just be a human being.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're cold enough on the material and familiar with it enough that you can just be a person that says something. They're prepared. And if we call them, they're going to be there and they're going to know it and they're going to be off book and they're going to be good at it, Yeah. It's about relationships and it's about, asking for the sale too. Like with director friends of mine now, like I'll straight up bug them about stuff, and sometimes it works. Kong Skull Island.
You hounded for that role? Well, how did
Oh, anytime I read Jordan Vogt Roberts' name in the trades, I text him. I'm like, who do I play? Who do I play? Like, I see that you're directing that. Who do I play? He's a friend of mine, and we've worked together a bunch. But
yeah.
No, I do it with network television people. You got to be cool. Like, you can't be a monster. But just as with going into your voice agency rather than emailing an MP3 from your bed.
Yeah.
Staying in front of people and reminding them like, there's only one of me on the planet. Like nobody's going to deliver these lines the way that I do. And if that fits your bill, it's a no-brainer. Like,
right.
Don't make me come in. Like, offer it to me. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm working to get that. I'm working to figure out where that lives in me in an authentic place.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it's and there are places where I feel very comfortable and it's I think, I don't know, it's a very cool, like it looks magical, but I think like you say, it's coming from an authentic place.
Oh yeah. I think it if it doesn't, it's really glaring. It's really conspicuous if you're I can remember being at my very first on-camera commercial agency here in town, and a client came in with a big tray full of like Jamba Juice for all the agents, and I was like, I'm not sure that that's the road. First of all, very expensive.
Very expensive.
But also like, I'm not like bribery.
Yeah.
But also bribery, I guess. I mean, it's worth a try, I guess. Who knows?
Who knows?
Be good at it. And be a fun person to be around. Like, be somebody that's going to show up and do it and be thankful and grateful. It's a delicate balance because you 100% have to feel like I belong. And I am worthy of, being in the winner's circle of castable people in Hollywood. So there's got to be some ego to it, some bravado. But then you also have to realize, like, hey, man, there are 1,000 more talented people than I am who have moved back home already, So be grateful and get in the shower and get in the van.
How did you find yourself in voiceover? I know that you had, the radio experience, but if that led you into that stuff, or what that process was like.
It was voiceover in particular in Los Angeles was a funny story. I was doing a one-man show with Larry Campbell at the Second City in Hollywood. I was part of his one-man show, and like the local news came to do a story on him because he was on According to Jim, I think he was still on it. And he was doing a one-man show, and I did a lot of entrances and exits during it and stuff. And Garth Kemp, the weathercaster, came to like do a spot on Larry or whatever. And Garth Kemp and I got talking, and he was like, "Hey, you've got a great voice. You should do voiceover. If you have a demo, email it to me. I think this is email times, and I'll send it to my agent or whatever." And it was just a relationship thing. Like we were hanging out one weekday morning for a couple of hours and hit it off. And I was like, oh, I'll just make a demo. So I started calling around to studios, and somebody, I can't think of his name. His name is Michael something, and I'll have to look him up and thank him because he did me a great favor where I called and said, like, what do you charge for doing a demo, for recording a demo? And he was like, well, we charge this, but like, what's your demo? Like, what's the copy going to be? And is it, animation, or is it commercial, or is it book on tape? What is it? And I was like, oh, all of it. And he was like, oh, well, that's super the wrong answer. Like, that's not how it works. And he said, you know what, do yourself a favor and go take a class with a friend of mine, and she will help you straighten it out. And it was Nancy Wolfson from Brain Tracks Audio. Mm-hmm. And I went, and she was like, okay. And she just helped me brand who I am, because I can remember coming out to Hollywood initially and meeting with big fat agents, and you'd be meeting with a film agent, and they'd be like, what do you want to do? And you're like, television, film, all of it. And they like, that's the wrong answer. You're talking to a film agent. You want to do film. And so, out here, I think in Detroit, it's probably less segmented, but commercial VO and animation and narration and all that stuff is very specialized out here. At my voice agency, I have different agents for all of that stuff.
Yeah, same.
People really specialize. And so working with Nancy Wolfson was great because she really did help me. I through a series of, I don't know, maybe a dozen privates with her, really kind of find my way into the work, but also brand myself. And realized, there are things I shouldn't be doing. Like, it's a waste of time for me to be like trying to be the youthful guy doing the thing with the thing. And like, I can make fun of that, but there are people whose voice that is, that are like, tonight on Fox. Like, there are people whose sweet spot that is. And so why not exploit your sweet spot first?
Yeah.
And it was very valuable. So I cut a demo with her, and then, one of the luxuries, I assume she's still doing this, is that she will then shepherd you in. She hand wrote notes at the time, along with my demo, to a handful of very powerful agencies. And I signed first with Special Artists, and then I moved over to DPN, which had been ICM. I can't even imagine how long I've been there now. I've probably been there over 10 years.
Wow.
But it's like, that was my bread and butter for a long time, was voiceover. That was my first stable money in the business in LA.
I think I adore Nancy and have taken some privates with her as well, and found having someone outside of you, especially when you get to a place where where you work in a specific market where you're kind of I always thought of myself as a wood chipper. You throw something to me, I'll grind it up and figure out what it is.
Sure.
And because LA is so specialized,
Yeah.
You're not going to see animation copy come through your mailbox that often when you're working in Chicago. It's almost exclusively commercial. Same thing in Detroit.
Sure.
So to prep and learn how to compartmentalize those things and to figure out where that lives in you, you know, and I think the benefit of having the improv training, allowing you to adapt and build an ear for each of those different things, but then figuring out where does it actually live in you, where does it hit the tuning fork.
That and the anything is possible mentality of yes and. So it's the way into the work going like, well, I can do this, but then also going anything is possible. And to combine those two things with the relationship thing, it was in Nancy Wolfson's living room one day that she gave me a piece of copy to work on, and I was looking at it for a couple of minutes. She turned around and was answering her emails, and she, over her shoulder, said, "Do you do Sean Connery?" And I was like, "Sure." I 100% didn't. I had never done it before. And by the end of that hour with her, she was like, "Oh, you have an audition tomorrow for a VH1 animated show to play Sean Connery." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I went to the video store, and I rented that movie where Sean Connery is with a young black man, and he's like, "You're the man now, dog," or whatever. Finding Forrester. And for me, the way I watched it, it may have been a VHS, maybe it was a DVD, but I rewound it, and for me, the way in was, "Better stir that soup." And
That's great.
Yeah, and I had the audition the next day and booked it, and it was a show called Illustrated, ILL, Illustrated, and it was kind of an irreverent, animated sketch show with people that I still work with. Jim Zulovic the late Jim Zulovic was a part of it. Yeah, he was one of the producers on it.
Wow.
And Jim Biederman, and it was cast by Tara Flanagan, she's in New York now, and she is still a casting person and still a friend of mine. And just by saying, I think the improv mentality of finding yourself saying a lot of yes and going like, yeah, I'll read for it. Like, what's the worst? I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to be there, and Sean Connery is going to be there. You know what I mean? Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
So throw yourself into it and do something scary and try something you're not good at. I'm not much of an impressionist, but when you find sweet spots, like, you'll find a couple of things. I learned through that show that I am Dick Cheney. Like, like it was through that it was like, oh, I can do that all day. And I had no idea, like never, no one that would never have come up in my career.
Yeah.
But they were like, "Do you do Dick Cheney?" And you're like, "Oh, I guess so."
Yeah. Play him for me and we'll figure it out.
Right.
It's one of the things I love about auditioning is that auditioning helps you find that you are limitless.
Yeah.
I had a similar thing I was doing Vince Vaughn. And they're like, "Can you do it? Can you do a Tom Hanks?" And I was in CESD's lobby going, I mean, how far it really is Tom Hanks off of Vince Vaughn? I guess if you pitch him down a little bit, he's there. And it was just this kind of thing of like making these discoveries. I just did a little bit of ADR on the new Fast and Furious movie, and I was talking to a guy who said, I do The Rock. I can't do Dwayne Johnson.
Interesting.
So and it's that same way of you were talking about Connery linking in on the
one
soup
phrase.
line.
Yeah.
That you find where that voice print aligns to yours or what you can link into and then build off of that.
I did a podcast with Paul F. Tompkins, one of his early Spontanea Nations, and the suggestion had us in Savannah, Georgia. Uh-huh. And it was fans that told me after it came out, they pointed out, because I never would have heard it, and I would never have tried this impression in 1,000 years, but my natural voice, when I begin speaking as though I am from Savannah, Georgia, comes out a little bit like Morgan Freeman. And that's actually not a very good version of it because I'm coming off a cold. But like that, I never would have tried it in a million years.
Yeah.
But they heard it and they were like, "Oh, you should do Morgan Freeman," Those discoveries and the willingness to try, I think, is the thing. And the improv willingness to try to go like, this might be terrible.
Yeah.
I might be awful at this, but I'll give it a shot.
Embrace it.
Yeah. Go big.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you commit to it? That's the only failure is if you're not jumping out of the plane.
And again, I would never, to this day, consider myself an impressionist. But when you find those sweet spots, like no one in the world can do my mother-in-law the way I am able to do my mother-in-law.
What do you do when you do your mother-in-law?
Mark, it's not. It's Mark, it's not. She's very breathy. And also the pastor that married my wife and me is somebody that I may be better at it than he is. Yeah. He talks from back here, and he also likes to hang on things with no dramatic question remaining. He once began a sermon on a Sunday morning saying, "My grandfather had a roll-top desk. It had 6 drawers, 3 on the left and 3 on the right." Yeah.
That sounded exactly like my grandfather.
Is that right?
Yeah, Grandpa Heinen.
Yeah.
Had a similar phrasing from the pulpit.
Yeah.
And
Very dramatic.
Very
Sort of like-
dramatic.
I mean, dead children knew he was going to say right. Like, there's only, you already said left. He wasn't going to say center.
Oh, man.
Yeah. No, so relationships are huge. There's sometimes ego I find in like, going like, oh, I don't want to take a class or get a coach or whatever. And those, it's more than just the training. It's the relationships and who you're going to meet through it. When I first moved out here, one of the instructors at the Second City, Hollywood, when it was on Melrose next to the Improv, had come through the Chicago program, and he was like, the people in my level 5 class were in my wedding. Like you make some of the best friends of your life studying this stuff. And it does teach you both on stage and off, like and in life, a bit of a fearlessness. It reduces the stakes for perfection enormously, so that you're like, I'll try it. The worst that can happen is that it blows and I won't get the job.
And I know it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like I would rather take a risk and then get to the end of it and go, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And people had that happen on numerous occasions. People are like, don't beat yourself up like that. I'm like, I'm not beating myself up on it. I just know that was a risk that was worth taking, but didn't work.
And sometimes I won't. Like for me, it's an either or. It's like, oh, I'll throw myself into this. Or if they're like, do you want to try a British accent? It's like, no, there are 2 British guys in the hall. So no, like I'm going to do me the way only I can, and that there's no failure in that either.
Yeah.
But I would counsel people to not take themselves out of too much.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you. It's good to see how far you can go, but there's certainly been things that, like, I cannot do a good Donald Trump to save my life.
Is that right?
I can do a bunch of other things.
Sure.
But I've had a couple auditions come down for Trump, and I try.
That's funny, yeah.
And I just cannot find my link into it. And I'm like, I'm going to let it go.
Yeah.
But who knows?
I mean, I think given time, you could probably work something out. But also, why? Like,
right.
I feel like it's a fairly saturated market.
I think so.
Yeah.
I feel like I prefer to do dead presidents.
Yes.
Like, I did Nixon for a book.
Oh, cool.
It was great. It was like a 12-hour audiobook called Crooked.
Yeah.
And narrated the whole thing as Richard Nixon, and it was a blast.
Oh, man.
Like a Lovecraftian alternate reality of explaining the Watergate affair.
Wow.
But through using like Cthulhu and demons and all that kind of
Really?
stuff. And it's a really well-written book, yeah.
That's cool.
It was a blast.
That's a deep, like 12 hours of that. It's got to put you in a headspace.
Have you done an audiobook?
No, I haven't.
It's something else.
It involves reading a book.
Yes, it Not all books are Fort-worthy.
I don't know.
But it's a kick in the head. Tell me, one of the things that I really wish I got a chance to see you do was Thrilling Adventure Hour.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was such a unique production. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came to be and how you get to be a part of that?
It's the very same story as all these others. It's it's from saying, sure, why not? So the Thrilling Adventure Hour was a staged production in the style of old time radio. And it had that conceit because 2 writer friends, Ben Acker and Ben Blacker, who went to Syracuse University together. And real names were Ben Acker, Ben Blacker. I think they literally found themselves in a line one day, you know, divided by like A through C, D through G kind of thing. And they became writing partners, and they had written a space western. They had written a thing called Sparks, Nevada, Marshall on Mars, and wanted to hear it out loud. So they had sort of like an informal table read in their living room, and they were, you know, this is 15 years ago, and they were sort of new to the business, obviously, and we're like, wow, these actors bring so much that even we didn't intend to these words. How do we? They frame it as, how do we exploit our friends to, you know, be able to hear more of our work, kind of thing. And so the old time radio hour, microphones across the front of a stage, you know, Natalie dressed actors and actresses, pages in hand. That conceit was just really born of like, we don't want to rehearse too much.
Yeah.
We don't have blocking. We don't want to have memorization, or, you know, like, and it because of that, it became very easy for the actors to do. We would rehearse like, you know, an hour earlier in the week kind of thing, and then come and do it. Initially, it started at M Bar on Fountain and Vine. In Hollywood. We were there for 5 years before moving to Largo at the Coronet. Wow. And because it was so low lifting, because the words were in your hand and it was really sort of an audio play, it was a great revolving door for celebrities and stuff, for guest actors to come in, because it didn't require much rehearsal. I mean, if need be, we could do it in the dressing room, you know, at 6 o'clock that evening kind of thing before the show. And it turned into this really wonderful 10-year run of, you know, there are several hundred episodes of podcasts, and these two are, you know, absolutely brilliant, and created not just Sparks, Nevada, Marshall on Mars, but Beyond Belief, which are sort of like the Thin Men movies, the Nick and Nora movies.
Yeah.
It's Frank and Sadie Doyle, and they're two very rich, very drunk socialites that solve ghost problems. Like they, you know, and the Adventures of Colonel TikTok and Moonshine Holler, and they just create all these very vivid worlds. And they sort of curated this wonderful cast of, you know, Paget Brewster and Paul F. Tompkins and Craig Kukowski and Mark Gagliardi and Hal Lublin and Annie Savage. And then that spread to being Busy Phillips and Janet Varney and Autumn Reeser and, you know, lots and lots of people. And including, you know, like our core cast was really solid. And then all these movie stars were like, can we come play? And it was born out of, I was teaching at the Second City in Hollywood on Melrose. And one night, because there wasn't a resident company there, on Wednesday nights, the teachers, like the Second City alum, would improvise to kind of give the students, you know, a little taste of what's possible. And one night after that, one of the students, Mark Gagliardi, said, hey, I have a friend he teaches writing in the writing program at Second City. You haven't met him yet. He wants to ask you to come be in this thing. So he pitched me playing this, you know, Marshall on Mars in a space western. And it didn't, you know, on its face, it didn't sound like much. And I had no idea who he was. And I was just like, sure, I'll come, you know, to a rehearsal this week or whatever. Yeah. And then synergy happens, because they had written him as kind of a straight ahead hero. And I'm not capable of a lot that's straight ahead. So I played him more like I play a lot of things, like where I find funny, which is like kind of a dumb guy with a big ego. And we found that character somewhere in the middle, and did it for 12 years, you know. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus now. We did a 10-year run and kind of brought it to a close. We took the show to Australia and New Zealand. Man. We've been to lots of cons around the country, and I hope to take it to Detroit and to London. But we're taking a little bit of a break, and because everybody's gotten busy, which is a good thing.
That's a great thing.
But yeah, I mean, it's all born of going like, sure, I'll show up, you know, rather than going like, wait, what have you done? And can I see your reel and whatever? Yeah. Knowing full well that if you go to that first rehearsal and it tanks, or, you know, you're like, oh, these people aren't capable of this, then you're going to go, I'm not available any longer. And there's no, you know, harm or foul in that. But yeah, just being available, finding yourself saying a lot of yes, it can really take your life in unexpected and fun ways.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
And there's something really wonderful in that, in discovering an artistic home.
Oh yeah.
Among a bunch of people. We had a voiceover improv group that was like that. Just this one person was like, hey, come play with us. And a year and a half later, these people are, family.
Yeah.
And I that's one of the unique things about this community of artists is that in every direction, regardless of discipline, that we're all kind of seeking that artistic connection to other people with different skill sets and all that other kind of thing. And there's that unifying thing that brought you to this place.
I think that that's a really healthy thing too, because also inherent in this work is competition.
Yes.
And so that unifying thing can be very valuable. Before I ran into you yesterday, I was at a session for a pilot. And it was for a recurring role in a pilot. And it's fascinating to, like, there were some guys there that you could feel some nerves and some need. And then I was there with my friend, when I arrived, I saw my friend Ithamar Enriquez, and I saw my friend Eugene Cordero. And you realize, like, I would love it if they got it.
Yeah.
I would love to get this, I suppose. But I would love it if they got it. And if they get it, it's because they were right for it. And they, fit the bill for what the show needs, what the network needs, whatever. And they are doing what they're doing kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's no, I never once have somebody walk into a waiting room and go, oh, man, that person's here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Mr. Belding was at that audition yesterday.
Yes, I saw.
Which was hilarious. We live in a weird town where some of those things happen.
That's right.
Like that story I told you yesterday about being in the booth. Oh man.
I mean, yeah.
It's crazy.
I love it. These are the things about this particular path that I didn't expect.
Sure.
And they're the most fun and joyous parts of it too. Of I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going. I dig it.
It's a fascinating world. It's totally worth it. You better love it, and you better be great at it. Yeah. I know a lot of people that love to laugh, and that's not reason enough to go into comedy. But if you feel your soul driven to create material and to, it's not about being on Letterman. It's not about being on talk shows. That's a side effect of what comes from this stuff. But I honestly feel sort of like Ricky Gervais said in Extras, looking back, I don't have what it takes to be a doctor or a lawyer. I can't imagine my life not doing this,
Yeah.
I don't know that this is the end all and be all. I may do other things as well, but I simply can't see, I'm not good at anything else.
When you try, when you find yourself in those places, and sometimes because of saying yes, you find yourself in a place where you're in a lecture hall and at the Bellagio going, this was great. Thank you for this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that the check is cleared, but I know why why I'm not in this world all the time.
Oh, yeah. You mean if you were one of the office workers that has come to a convention?
Sure.
Yeah.
Or that, or even sometimes you'll do, we do the corporate event and, you're working with people who are producing it or whatever.
Right.
I mean, just there's so, the vastness of this career path, and you intersect with so many different folks.
Oh, yeah.
When people are like, someone's like, well, no pressure. When someone comes over to you and tells you that as you're getting ready to present something to their boss,
right,
where they're feeling the pressure and try to give it to you, my response is always, yeah, no, you're right, no pressure.
I don't feel any pressure.
I feel no pressure.
Yeah. Because
I'm going to leave here, and whether I work for you or not tomorrow,
right,
I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. No, it's enormously liberating to be able to have that perspective. And also on the weekend of it, on the weakness tip of it, if you told me that I had to sit at a desk between now and 5 o'clock, my throat would close in the first half hour. I couldn't do it. Yeah. I've done it. I guess I had office jobs before, but it is just a mindset that I'm not I think it's one of the things that's exciting about this work too, is also the lottery fever of stuff. Like if I knew with cost of living adjustments what I was going to make for the rest of my time on the planet, I'd be bored. But every once in a while in this business, when you book a gig, you're like, ooh, a little like I just won the micro lottery.
Yeah.
This will keep me going for another couple months, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's something that people should be prepared for too, I guess, is that, I consider myself very fortunate, and it's been a long road, but like I'm not set, you know what I mean? Like it's still a hustle, and
Yes.
you still are looking, nothing is anticipatable. Like I suppose outside having a series regular job on a television show, but even those can go away tonight.
Boy. That's right.
You can't rely on it.
No.
And there is a bit of a mindset where you book a big thing and you're like, okay, so it's this or better from here on out. And you go, nope. Like I have plenty of friends that were series regulars on television shows for years and years, and then the phone doesn't ring for a while.
Yeah.
And they have to kind of go back to the farm team, and then you start seeing them at commercial auditions and stuff, which you didn't for a while.
Yeah.
I was talking with Ptolemy Slocum yesterday at that commercial audition.
Yeah.
He was one of the lab techs on Westworld.
Oh, wow.
And I've known him out here just from being in waiting rooms for probably, 8-10 years. And he and I were talking about, just that notion that that it's about being time on task and just being in it and being cool and showing up.
That's it.
Yeah.
Dude, this has been really, really great.
Oh, is it over?
Yeah, we've just passed our hour mark.
I like it.
Well, what I really appreciate about this conversation too, as I go back over the last hour and analyze, I really love the practical nuts and bolts, like not only the mindset that's required to hang in and to have a long view about your career. I think and coming back to where we started of just saying yes.
Yeah.
To opportunity is and to not know where it goes, but trust it.
Yeah, and as with all things in life, it's a balance. Like there are definitely things that I've said no to. I can remember a couple of years ago going out for an audition for Philips, and got there. I thought it was Philips Electronics, and it was Philips Health. And I called my people afterwards, and I was like, guys, I think I'm done with these. Like, I think I don't want to play the guy with gastritis. Like I don't think I want to be that guy anymore. Like I think I may be beyond that. And like I just don't want to, like I want to insulate my brand, and it feels egotistical to even say something like that. But you have to a little bit, know. So it's a balance. I mean, but generally say yes to a lot of stuff. Challenge yourself. Be a little bit risk taking, and the rewards can be great.
How can people find you, social media and that kind of stuff? And what this is actually one of my favorite questions, and I haven't asked it in a while, but what's something that you've done that either you're exceedingly proud of and it hasn't gotten a lot of attention that you would love people to see? Like if you're interested in seeing something that's kind of cool and surprising, I'd love for people to check this thing out.
There are lots of those. People can find me on Twitter at Marc Evan Jackson. It's MarcEvanJackson. The thing that stops me, like I've done enough work now that I sometimes get spoken to in public, and it's great. And if it's Parks and Rec or Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Good Place or 22 Jump Street or Kong Skull Island, all of that is great. But I really stop and talk to people when they ask me about Sparks, Nevada, Marshall on Mars from the Thrilling Adventure Hour, which I encourage people to check out on the podcast networks. I don't know where it is. But the Thrilling Adventure Hour, or a movie called Kings of Summer, which is a beautiful independent movie from a few years back, very reminiscent of early Amblin movies. It's a coming-of-age film, and the only real adults in it are Nick Offerman, Megan Mullally, and me. And it's about kids who run away from home and build a house in the woods one summer, and it's gorgeous. But the thing about it, which I'm exceedingly proud, is the Detroit Creativity Project. My wife and I started a charity 5 years ago to offer improv instruction free of charge in middle and high schools in Detroit. And it's pretty great. We've taught over 2,000 students to improvise in the last 5 years. Wow. We're raising a lot of money to do it. It's a very lean organization. We're paying our friends that are still in Detroit, people that we came up with and that are improvisers there, to go into these schools and offer this life-changing curiosity and confidence builder. It's something that really informs social and emotional learning. We've just finished a 2-year program, a 2-year study with the University of Michigan to evaluate the program, and there are empirical scientific data showing that students have less social anxiety and less social phobia and less depression as a result of this thing. So people can check it out at dcpimprov.org. It's the Detroit Creativity Project, and I'm exceedingly proud of it.
Awesome. Dude, thank you so much for spending some time. And
Thank you.
It was just great to be able to sit across from you and chat about stuff we haven't talked about in either before or in a long time. It's just really good to see you, man.
And you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for listening, and we'll holla at you soon. Let me find that. There's the play. Peace. Thank you for joining us on All Over Voiceover with Kif VH. Please take a moment to review the show and let other folks know what you thought. And if you dug it, please subscribe. Follow the show on Twitter at AllOverVO, and check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/AllOverVO with Kif VH. That's it for this time. You get what you get, and don't get upset. Claim victory and depart the field.